What's the weirdest thing a medical professional has casually said to you? I live in Ireland. The surgeon who replaced my hip is also a farmer. The day before I was due to be discharged, he came in on his rounds. He said, "I may or may not see you tomorrow. It depends on the dog." So I said, "Okay, what's up with the dog?" He told me the dog broke his leg and was having it set tomorrow, but he wasn't sure what time, so I said, "Sure, bring in the old dog and I'll mind him." This is rural Ireland, bear in mind, and I was in the convalescent area of the hospital by then, and shortly after breakfast he arrived in with the dog, lovely border collie with his leg in plaster. He stayed with me watching TV till the doc was finished replacing another hip and was ready to discharge me and we could all go home. It could only happen in Ireland. There's an ophthalmologist on TikTok who plays a bunch of different doctors, and my favorite is rural medicine. People pay him in crops or other non-monetary goods, and the only MRI is at the Texaco shop. When I was 12, I had a dentist say, "Hold on, I think I might be counting wrong. You shouldn't have those yet." Okay, never mind, those are definitely your wisdom teeth. Your mouth is just huge, I guess. They said it was the youngest they've ever seen anyone get their wisdom teeth. They called in every dentist in the building to come look at my mouth. I was getting my blood drawn for a mono test back around 2006. The older lady nurse asked me what sort of music I liked. I figured she was making small talk to get my mind off the needles, so I rattled off a few bands I'd been listening to. One of them happens to be Postal Service. She says, "Oh, I know that one." I reply, "Yeah, it's the same lead singer as Death Cab for Cutie." She says, "I know. He's my son." When I was like 20, my endocrinologist took a good look at me and asked, "Are you okay with your face being so asymmetrical?" I had never really noticed it before, but boy have I noticed it since. Same here. The dentist said I like the top part of your face but not the bottom part. Since then I'm very aware of my mouth and chin. After 30 years I still hear him say it. He probably meant that your jaw is messing your teeth up a little bit, likely in a way only dentists would ever notice or care about. I had a really weird throat issue. It didn't hurt, it just felt like something was stuck in there. I had been a vegetarian for years at this point, and the doctor said I likely had a chicken bone stuck in there. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Haven't you heard? Humans will unknowingly eat an average of 7 chickens in our lifetimes due to them crawling into our mouths while we sleep. This is the part where all your dignity goes out the window. I'm going to tape your penis to your abdomen. When I got the snip, I was told to drop my drawers and lie on a table in the other room. A gentleman doctor walked into the room, taped my dong to my abdomen and then introduced himself as Drive. I said, "I hope so." I'm dying imagining the alternate universe where he doesn't introduce himself and just waves and says, "All right, see ya," and walks out of the room and directly out of the clinic. The dong taper strikes again. After destroying my knee riding BMX at 17, the emergency surgeon said, "Wow, really fucked that up." 10 years later, and another serious knee injury from riding, I saw the same surgeon. He did a great job on the first one. First words out of his mouth were, "I remember you. Fucked up the other one, huh?" A nurse of some kind took my blood pressure. He said what the numbers were. I asked, "Is that good?" He said, "I'm not qualified to give you a professional opinion on the matter. You should ask your doctor." I asked, "But like, unprofessionally, is that good?" He said, "Unprofessionally, well, in my purely personal opinion that I am sharing with you as an individual and not in any medical or official capacity whatsoever, you should buy stronger deodorant." Edit. For clarity, I was definitely stinky. I was homeless at the time. I was well aware of this fact. If you're worried you're a little funky, don't. You would almost assuredly notice if you smelled really bad. If you don't mind, I'd like to show everyone pictures of your tonsils. According to her, I had the most disgusting tonsils she had ever seen in her years in the business, and gosh darn she wanted to show them off. Had a similar experience at a dentist. I apparently had a very rare problem, and even the oldest doctor only had seen this 2 times in his life. For the next few sessions all other doctors were called in and he showed them it. I was fine with it, but it was an odd situation sitting on the dentist chair while 4 doctors and a few nurses were around you and looked very interested what will happen next. So I was the real life example for a textbook lecture. My husband has 2 rare, chronic illnesses and his doctor had the residents try to diagnose what he has based on his symptoms. None of them got it right. He said it was kind of funny to watch them all trying to get it right. Reminds me of a time when I took my cat to the vet. It was time for him to get sterilized, but during the appointment, the vet discovered that his testicles had never descended. It caused a small sensation in that office, and every single vet and trainee vet in that office wanted to feel his empty ballsack. After the second person copped a feel, my cat started squirming. By the 5th, he drew blood. All right, the vet said as she withdrew her shredded finger, I guess we deserved that. Was living in a foreign country and had a cold, flu-type illness. Went to the doc and he comes eating a bowl of cereal. Already weird. Checks some things and says, do you know what ALDS is? I'm in complete shock and say yes, I do. He follows up with, it's a virus and there is no cure. Goes on to explain why there is no cure, all while I'm seeing my life over as I know it. Finally ends with, but you don't have that virus, you have a different one, much more common and treatable, but I wanted you to understand why an antibiotic wouldn't work. Still in shock, I'm like, so I don't have AIDS then, right? He goes, no, and walks out. What a roller coaster. Edit. This was in Switzerland about 15 years ago and I'm American. Yes, he was slurping his cereal the whole time. Edit 2. He did explain the difference between HIV and ALDS. Guess he just wanted to come in hot and get my attention. Thanks all. Yeah, I went to a sexual health checkup and the doc just started listing each possible STI, before finishing with, you don't have those. For some reason they love to act like it's a game show. Herpes. We tested you for herpes, did we see herpes? Buzz. No herpes. But what about gonorrhea, do we see gonorrhea? Lol. Doc. Do you know what AIDS is? Patient. Yeah, sweating. Doc. Well, you should be happy to know the good news is you don't have that. Patient. That's a good thing, I you. Doc. The bad news is that you probably have cancer. Doc on phone, I have some bad news and some worse news for you. Patient. Okay, what's the bad news? Doc. I have your test results, and the report says you probably have about 7 days or so left to live. Patient. Oh my God. If that's the bad news, what the hell is the worst news? Doc. I meant to call you last week. Edit. Tweaked text a bit based on comments. Doc. I have some bad news, you better sit down. Patient. What is it, Doc? Doc. You have very little time left. Patient. Oh my God, how long do I have? Doc. 5. Patient. 5 what? Years, months. Doc. 4, 3, 2. You just hang on right there, we will get you a wheelchair and admitted to the hospital. We have to do a colonoscopy, but don't worry, I will knock you out before sticking a camera up your ass. I told an OBGYN during an exam my husband and I had just started trying to get pregnant and she said, are you tracking your cycle or just fucking all time? Hearing that come out of a small elderly black woman was freaking hilarious. She was close to retirement and had zero filter, miss her. Doctor. You look great. How did you lose weight? Son. Eating disorder, anorexia, drive. Well, keep doing whatever you are doing, it's working great. Oh man, I had a family member who was dropping weight and everyone was telling her to keep doing whatever she was doing. She was doing crystal meth. Thankfully quit it soon, she couldn't afford it. So yeah, none of use that phrase anymore, with anyone. If you want to help people, don't go into medicine. As a doctor, I'm nothing more than a people mechanic, and much like a car mechanic, I patch people back together well enough to get them out of the door until I see them again. If I could go back, I'd run as far away from medicine as I could. Phew. This gained more traction than I expected. For context, this sentiment was offered to me by a 70-year-old, 40-plus-year tenured physician who was on more boards than I care to list and was a very well-respected surgeon. As many in the comments have stated, his distaste for the job had very much to do with the long list of hoops that he had to jump through in order to order and perform even the most basic treatments, and yes, the endless charting was exhaustive to witness, much less perform. He also went so far as to send a hospital-wide email asking any physician who had the time to sit in a meeting with all of the pre-med people who had dedicated the most time to shadowing for a brief back and forth. Asked a few questions along the lines of, who's unhappy with their job? How many have been divorced? How many think you're overworked? How many would go back to med school, especially with the debt load today? And a few more questions that painted a very, at least with this test group of 40-plus people, realistic picture of how unhappy they all were. At least 80% raised their hands in favor of the most negative option presented and briefly attested to how bad and hard the job had been, and of those that were heavily in favor of the job, I'd say at least 80% were quite obviously there for the money and nothing more. I still have an immense respect for those who choose to work in healthcare. But I'm also glad that I steered away from it, especially when I consider that I would have entered residency in the midst of a pandemic. Phew. A German friend of mine did car mechanic to surgeon pipeline, and he said he got tired of working on cars, so wanted to work on people. He'd taken the required tests to qualify for med school and kept it in his back pocket in case he got tired of being a mechanic, so worked out for him. Really cool guy, super unique. Comes off like a loud metalhead, one of the smartest and nicest guys I know. My previous OBGYN came through my line at my old job. For some reason I blanked on who he was. Like I knew him, but for the life of me I couldn't remember how. He saw I was struggling and said, "Don't remember me. I'll give you a hint. Last time I saw you, you were in my office with your ankles in the air." Loudly. In front of a line of little old ladies fresh from church, wanting to buy flowers from the garden center. He was an amazing doc and figured out what was wrong with me when no other doc could, but in that moment the embarrassment could have killed me lol. I laugh about it now, it's totally fine. He was a riot of a doctor. I passed out in his office once and I woke up to him standing over me going, "Well, why'd you do that?" His nurse chaperone was old enough to be my grandma and she was still boxing. Okay, I'm sorry, you're right that this is unprofessional and he should not have said that, but it is also hilarious and made me laugh out loud. I once had a doctor who cursed. It doesn't sound like much, I curse all the time, but it actually put me at ease. He'd be talking about my insurance company and say, "Those motherfuckers think they can dictate the work I do here." He was probably the best doctor I ever had. Then one day he ghosted and even the office personnel were mystified, or so they said. A few years later I found out online that he was arrested for selling steroid scripts. Many scripts. Got sentenced to 10 years. What a waste of a good doctor. SMH. The doc who sewed up my hernia was like this, super nice and friendly. Had an awesome office with snakes preserved in jars, and all kinds of health posters ir Hindi. Combined with his personality I assume he did charity work in India and just neat doodads and knickknacks. If you saw him out and about you'd assume he was like a stoner philosobro. He had super long hair, these crazy lime green glasses, and just a really chill low-key attitude. But that really honestly did not put me at ease for me. For like a GP or PCP, yeah, that's great, but IDK, I just feel like a more doctor guy doing my surgery would put me more at ease. He did a great job and all, it was just off-putting. I used to work in an OR. It was my dream job since I was little, and I quickly learned that I have way too much anxiety to succeed in that kind of environment. It's made me extremely bitter towards pretty much all surgeons. But, as long as they're good as their job's OBS. Me too. I was at my new rheumatologist and she said something like, "It's clear we don't have to put you through all that shit," and then stopped herself dead, looking horrified that she'd just sworn in front of a patient, but I just started laughing. I totally get it. Doc, you're in a tiring profession that leads to severe burnouts. Let off some steam, let down your social mask a bit. I can handle a few four-letter words, I'm a grown-up. My primary care doctor is super chill like this. He walks into my appointments, my health is a shit show, so I see him every 2 to 3 months, at least sees me and mock yells, "Oh hell, not you again." Sometimes I think he's only half joking though. We always go off topic chatting and run over on appointment windows and make him behind schedule. I've started trying to schedule the last slot of the day because of that, lol. Sometimes it's the other way around. I was working as a hydrotherapist and saw one of my patients, an older man, in the supermarket. I said hi and he asked me if he knew me. I told him yeah, from therapy, to which he replied, "Oh, I didn't recognize you with clothes on." That was slightly embarrassing, haha. He and the nurse from my breast surgeon should meet. I bumped into her shopping for shoes and after the "Hi, how are yous?" she asks how my boobs are doing, as I'd had loads of complications, before telling me that they look fantastic. The looks from the other shoppers were priceless. She was the best nurse. I wouldn't have made it through both surgeries and post-ops without her. It's hilarious to me how easily we see people as their uniform and not their face. I work at a port and I am always in my full regalia. Black pants, white shirt, high visibility vest, toque on my head. I came in one day on my day off and a man who I worked with every single day asked if he could help me. I was in normal people clothes but happened to have my work hat in my pocket. I put it on and he immediately recognized me.